Hello, and welcome to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast with your hosts, Brent Aiken, David Pruitt, and Russell Martin. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now, here's your host for this week, Brent Aiken. Hey, and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to welcome you and invite you over to our website, studentministryconversations.org, where you can find all of our previous episodes, show notes, and blog articles. Our goal is that you are inspired, encouraged, and the things that you hear on this podcast can equip you to be a better student pastor for the church that you're serving in. So today, I have the privilege of sitting down with Jim Johnson. And so Jim has been in the financial planning industry for quite a while now. And I personally use Jim as my financial planner. And honestly, I need to probably be throwing more money at you. And we can talk about that after the episode. But with that being said, I've been with Jim for a couple years now. If you live in New Mexico, Texas, and a bunch of other states that he'll mention in a second, you can work with him too. But Jim is going to sit down with us today, and he's going to talk about how to prepare for retirement as a youth pastor. And I think that's a really, really big conversation to have, because I know personally that a lot of churches don't have church-backed retirement. And so a lot of this is you have to go out and do it yourself. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how you can get out and how you can start retirement for you and your family right now with the job that you have, and where you can see the benefit of that down the road. So Jim, before we get into that, please let me know who you are and all the history of you in financial planning and anything else you want to share.
All right. Thank you, Brent. I appreciate it. And do appreciate the opportunity to share and kind of get this information out. As Brent said, I have been doing this for quite some time. Actually, it's been 29 years, a little over 29 years now, that been working with this business, helping families, serving them in all their needs, but particularly their retirement needs. Brent asked me a question as we were getting started, kind of why do I do what I do? And so kind of a backstory to that. My dad used to be a youth minister, a youth pastor at the same church I grew up in. Kind of went into youth ministry late in his life, but as Brent indicated, there was no retirement for him. At the same time, my mom was the secretary receptionist at the same church and also had no retirement. So when I got involved with this business, started doing this, that was a big driving factor, because I knew my folks had never worked anywhere where they had those retirement options to set up retirement. So kind of took it personally. It kind of drove me. First started with my family, obviously helping getting them set up. 29 years later now, still love what I do, helping families. And I can tell you, I've done a lot of studies. There was a study that my wife and I went through several years back. Some of you may have heard about it, called Crown Ministries. And even through that program, our eyes were opened up to, from a biblical standpoint, how there are more scriptures written about finance and money than there are faith and love, both put together. So somebody knew we were going to have an issue with this topic about money and everything. So I do enjoy that part of it. I will throw in here that my daughter has also gone into youth ministry. She is also the associate youth pastor right there with Brent at his church. And so needless to say, it's very close to home, to make sure that I'm even taking care of her also for her future retirement. Be able to help her and support her with what she loves doing. So so a little bit there of why I do what I do. So I'm going to be sharing some different ideas, some different topics with you. But Brent has given some questions. So Brent, I think what I'll do is I'll throw it back to you and kind of have you go through these questions. That's going to lead us into a lot of the education that I usually start with when I'm going to educate somebody about savings and investing. So
Yeah,
Brent,
definitely.
why don't you go ahead and hit some of these questions that you have?
Yeah, no, that's definitely what we want to do. And the big thing with this is, as you said, illiteracy is a big part of the problem, or just not knowing that A, it's time to start, B, how to do it, or C, like what little amount of money can I throw towards it, or how much money can I throw towards it, all those different things. And so let's just start with the fact of, when should I start planning for my retirement, or is it too late to start? Because the thing is we have youth pastors that are 18 to 24 that listen to this, and we have youth pastors well into their 40s and 50s that are listening to this. And so this is kind of a smorgasbord of different ages. And so is there a too late to start, and then is there a too early to start?
Good, very good questions, Brent. Probably the most common questions. I never get asked the question, is it too early to start? That's an easy one to answer. It's never too early. What I would tell a new youth pastor just coming in, I would tell them the same thing as I would any other 18, 19-year-old. If I'm talking to seniors that are getting ready to graduate high school, as soon as you get that first job, you get that first paycheck, you want to get started. And there's never a good time. It's a matter of just getting it started. I will tell folks, even if you get started with as little as $50 a month, the younger you are and you can start that, number one, you're going to create that discipline of saving early. So the earlier you can create that discipline to save, it becomes easier. What happens in life is as we start getting older, you start getting into your upper 20s, your 30s. Maybe you get married, you start having kids. If you haven't created yet the discipline to save, it becomes harder actually to do that. So the earlier we can get started, the better. To the question, is it ever too late? No, it's never too late. Now, the later you wait, depending on what your goal and objectives are and what you're trying to save and invest for, obviously you don't have as much time on your side. And so particularly if it's retirement, if somebody starts at the age of 20, and I'm going to share some examples with y'all here later, but if you start earlier, it doesn't take as much if you start early to save, to accumulate a good amount at retirement. The later you wait, you can still accomplish the same goals, but it's going to require you to invest more, a higher amount, to maybe accomplish the same goal. So it's definitely never too early, but it's never too late. Getting started, having something at retirement is better than nothing at all.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you brought in the fact of discipline, because that's I mean, in the grand scheme of life, there's nothing more, like, I guess, important than the disciplines that you run. Whether that be the discipline to get into the Word and have your your personal relationship with Jesus, or how to handle your finances, or how to treat your family, or anything else like that. Personal discipline is the key. And so starting that discipline as early as you can is a fantastic thing to do. And so
Yes.
going from, I guess, both situations, and you said you're going to touch on this a little bit more, for the 20 to 24, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, do their options for setting up retirement differ from the options of, say, starting in your 40s?
No, not really. Your options are going to be the same. If we're talking to this group of youth pastors, if you don't have if you're not at a church that sponsors a retirement program of any sort, you're going to be doing it all on your own. Typically, you're going to be looking then at two different options. You're either going to be looking at a traditional IRA, or you're going to be looking at a Roth IRA. And this is if you're specifically targeting to save and invest for retirement. Is going to be that traditional IRA or Roth IRA. Here's the difference. Again, come back to education. You got to have knowledge to know which one's going to be best for you. a traditional IRA, you fund both of these IRAs with after-tax dollars. But your traditional IRA, if you qualify, meaning if you can itemize on your taxes, then what's going to happen is you're going to be able to write off or reduce your taxes by a portion of what you funded into that traditional IRA. All right. But what happens then is when you do that, you create what's called a cost basis. That cost basis is calculated and used. So when you get out at retirement time, now you're going to pay taxes on some of those distributions as it comes out because of the fact that you used it as a write-off back earlier. All right. The trade-off, a Roth IRA, again, you're still funding it with after-tax dollars, but now you don't write off. There's no deductions for funding a Roth IRA. But your trade-off now is at retirement time, when you start drawing that money off of a Roth, is 100% tax-free income. Even your gains, your dividends, everything are now 100% tax-free, right? So simply put, when I'm working with someone today, and this would be the same even with somebody, I would even say in their 30s and 40s, I typically am finding myself primarily going the Roth IRA direction. To me, at retirement time, that's going to be more powerful to know that none of your money you're drawing off your retirement account is getting eaten up in taxes. It doesn't cause a taxable event. So I would always favor that Roth IRA over a traditional from a funding standpoint. All right. Now, if you work somewhere where the church does have, and this is very rare to find maybe for youth pastors, or even where a church will have a retirement plan that they're offering to their staff. Pastors, that works a little bit different because they've got pensions, they've got things of that nature that they're paying into. Youth pastors aren't going to normally find that, but if you do, you might find in a church of what's called a simple IRA. That is what I had the great opportunity to set up for the church that my folks were at, that I grew up in. And we were able to get that set up for the church. Simple IRAs have a matching element to it, to where if they will adopt it, you fund it in, and a simple has a match dollar for dollar up to 3%. So if that's something that's there that they can do, that's fantastic. You're typically not going to find a 401k in a church because your 401ks are for profit companies, and of course churches are nonprofit. So a discussion of 401k in this element would not even, it's just not going to be available. But typically you're going to find, Brent, as we talked about, you're going to find it where as youth pastors, you're going to be funding your own self for retirement, which then you're going to be looking at either that traditional or that Roth IRA.
Okay. Yeah. And I think coming from a church perspective, we all love tax-free because we use it all the time. And so tax-free money coming out when I need it sounds great to me. And so I definitely, the Roth IRA is the way to go. And so maybe we have listeners that are particularly looking at this right now. And they're just like, okay, well, like, this sounds great. I get paid. I mean, just throwing a number out there, I get paid $1,000, $1,200 a month. What would you say an ideal percentage is to kind of just, I guess, aim for as like a target percentage of like, I'm going to give 10% or 15% or whatever percent of my money each month towards my retirement goals? Like, is there a number that you would typically aim for in that regard, or how does that work for your recommendation at least?
There is, Brent, and you'll have a different financial advisors, financial planners that will say different things. What I get people to target on is get on track to where you're saving and investing 10% of your income. Now that full 10% may not be going all into retirement, because I'm also a believer that you need to make sure that you've got liquid assets available. You've got monies available in emergencies. That you've got money. Maybe you're planning for a vacation 2 years out. So you want to make sure that you got, but the target is 10%. All right. Now, I'm going to throw this in there because this podcast, I can do this, but I share this with a lot of the families that I also work with, in that you want to make sure you've got those priorities straight when it comes to saving and investing. From a personal standpoint, I was able to actually start saving and investing more for myself and our family when I was tithing first the full 10%. It's amazing how God works with that. And I feel on this podcast I can share that. But you don't want to start saving and investing and in front of the tithing. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so when you were saying that target of that 10%, is do the tithing portion first, and then look at from the savings and investing. It might be that when you first start, especially a lot of youth pastors, monthly, if you're depending on where you're at, if you're only making $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year, and you've got a vehicle payment, you've got a rent on a home, you got to look at, okay, but where am I at there? And 10% may not work right now.
Yeah.
And that's where I fall back on, then at the least, start creating the discipline of saving, and look at that dollar amount. Our minds, ideally, yes, 10%, but our minds don't work in percentages. Our mind works in with dollar signs.
Sure.
And so, if 10%, if it's, very simply put, if your check is 1,000, yeah, 10%'s $100. But you might look at your entire budget and be like, yeah, but right now I can't do $100 with what I've got.
Yeah.
But I can do 50. Then start with 50. But ideally, yeah, Brent, back to that question. Yeah, 10% is always that goal. And that would be from a percentage standpoint. Now, if we're funding let's just use the example of if we're funding a Roth IRA, there's another goal there, because your Roth IRA is going to have a max that you can fund in a year. So right now, and I believe this is raising 2023 for those under age 50 was $6,500. Those over the age of 50 was $7,500. My understanding is that what they're doing is for those under age 50, 2024, they're going to raise that maximum from $6,500 to $7,000. So if you're thinking about from funding for retirement and you're going to do a Roth IRA, that would be another goal from a dollar amount, is to get on track where you're maxing out that Roth IRA of $7,000 a year. Now, if you do the math and you divide 7,000 by 12, that's a big number.
Yeah.
And so, that might be shell shock to some people, but that would be another goal to try to strive and go for.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think with that, we can definitely kind of lean into the conversation that you said just a second ago, because you said that earlier you said that a little money sometimes can outweigh a lot of money. And I think that's something that everybody is kind of like, well, what exactly does that mean? Because what does it look like? Well, how does a little money outweigh a lot of money? And that might be something that a lot of people are like, wait, hold on, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's walk into that real quick and see what that does.
Okay. So those of you that are watching this on video, there's a slide that Brent's going to share with us, and it's called the time value of money. Brent, if
Yep.
you can find that, make sure that that's up for him. But what this simply shows, I think it's about 3 slides in there, Brent, that you'll
Okay.
find that. Yeah, right there. Um, so hopefully y'all can read this and see this easy. But time value of money, probably a very, very important concept to understand. What this simply shows here is this titles is when 44,000 is more than 209,000. So what this simply shows is somebody that were to get started at age 22, and this is a little bit older slide when the maximum that you could put into an IRA was only 5,500 if you were under age 50. But you get the point of what it's going to do. So if somebody at age 22 started investing into and we're going to say a Roth IRA, and they were maxing that out at $5,500 a year. And they did that from age 22 to age 29. So after age 29, they stopped. Maybe they got married. Maybe they had kids. They maybe had to change some change financially, but they stopped and they never invested another dime. All right. Then that means over that time frame, they will have invested of their own money $44,000. But as this slide shows, when they come out to age 67, let's just say that was their target date for retirement. By age 67, that $44,000 investment has grown to over $2 million in value in their investment. Right? Versus individual B here, that from 22 to 29 didn't invest. They all of a sudden at age 30 decided, okay, now I'm ready. Maybe they were one of these individuals that said, I need to wait until I'm better financially sound. So they waited. They didn't even get started till age 30. They start maxing out that IRA at 5,500, but they do that every single year from age 30 all the way to age 67. They will have invested a total of their own money of 209,000, and at age 67 their account value is at 1.8 million. Now granted, 1.8 million at retirement time sounds great, but I think we would all agree if we could have 2 million and only have invested 44,000, that's the better route to go. So it goes back, Brent, what we were talking about. The earlier that somebody can get started, this answers that question. And the point of it is you got more time on your side. All right. Now, to kind of explain how this works, what we're talking about is we're talking about the compounding effect of our money. How is our money going to compound over time? So there's 2 other slides that we can show this. Brent, if you'll go back to that first one,
Okay.
that what this does is there's a rule when we talk about money and how our money compounds, and that is what's called the rule of 72. This rule, ironically, used to be called the banker's rule because bankers understood this concept. We teach this to everybody that we sit down with. What you simply do is you take the rule of 72, you divide it by whatever return, whatever interest you can get on your money. The result being how many years it's going to take your money to double. So what we do, again, from an educational standpoint, most people, not only are they not saving, but they don't know really where to save, how to put that money to work for them. Well, if you're putting your money we're just going to say at a bank, and in that bank, you could get a 3% return. 72 divided by 3 is 24. All right. So this example shows if somebody just took a one-time investment, $2,000, they threw it in the bank, and they could get that 3%, it would take them 24 years. So I'm going to use this as an example where maybe some people can relate to this. Let's say you've gotten married, you're getting ready to have your first child, and you decide, you know what? When he or she is born, we're going to take $2,000 and we're going to put that in the savings account for them. In this scenario, with the way it works, when they would finally turn age 24, they would have a whopping $4,000. Another 24 years, when they're 48 years old, they're going to have $8,000. Even in today's dollars, much less in the future, what's that really going to do? So now you learn this. So now if you could go out, put your money into an investment where you could average a 6%, or I'm going to jump on over even a 10%. So let's just jump over to the column of 10%, because that's the world of which I work in when I'm working. And I'm going to show you what we do to get that with the use of some different investment programs that we work with. But now 72 divided by 10 is 7. Okay. Now for you technical folks, yes, I know it's 7.2, but we're going to take out the 0.2. So every 7 years, our money now has that ability to double. So now that 2,000 in 7 years is 4, and you can go down the column where all of a sudden that same scenario, if you took $2,000 one time for your child when they were born, now when they turn 56, if they never touch it, they keep it invested, they've got the potential at 56 to have over $500,000 at age 56. All right. Now, if we want to make this even more impactful, the next slide shows a one-time investment of $10,000. Okay. Maybe let's use the same example. Maybe a grandparent has decided to gift that grandchild $10,000. So you as the parent, you're going to go and, okay, what do I do? Well, maybe you've sat down with someone like me where we can show you how to get that invested properly. You've got the ability to completely change that child's entire financial future with that one $10,000 investment, because you can look at that same concept at 10%. And now when they're turning age 56, that $10,000 has grown to a value of over $1.7 million. This is the impact. 29 years of doing this business, I have seen this rule work for my clients, where we've watched and we've seen where when I look at their account values today versus how much they've invested, they have more than double than what they've put in over certain. So we can see where this rule definitely works as that compounding effect goes. So Brent, again, it comes back to just kind of some of the knowledge, understanding where to take your money, where to put your money. And I guess what I'll do is I'll go on in from there, because I'm sure that has probably led to a question. Okay, Jim, that sounds great, but where in the world can I get a 10% return? I've never invested before. I've never heard anything like this. When I first got introduced to these concepts, my wife and I, which Brent has met, we had only been married a year and a half when we got exposed to this information. Literally has changed our entire financial future learning this. When I was sitting in, it was through an investment seminar. And when I was sitting in on this seminar, I was learning, I was looking at all this information. They went through the rule of 72. They went through with what I'm getting ready to go into. My first question was, why are we not taught this information? Why do we not know this? Because it's simple concepts, just like the rule of 72. Well, banks and other investment firms, they don't want us to understand that rule, because they want that money to work for them, not us. So I took it personally. I was like, wait a minute. All right. So now even 29 years later, I want to keep these concepts so simple so anybody can understand. So let's come back again to that 10%. Where do we go? How do we get that? All right. So what we use is we use the use of mutual funds as the investment vehicles. Now, for this podcast, what I would, to keep it very simple, is to understand that with mutual fund investing, there are all different types of mutual funds, everything from very conservative to very aggressive, everything in between, international mutual funds, bond mutual funds, you name it. The point there is no matter what somebody's goal and objectives are, no matter their age, we can use mutual funds to fit a portfolio that's going to fit their age, their time frame, their risk tolerance. We can use those to build a portfolio to meet those goals and objectives. All right.
Yeah.
So, how does a mutual fund work? Brent, that would be that next slide there.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to walk everyone through this so you can kind of see a visual of basically what this looks like when you're investing in a mutual fund. All right. So no matter what type of fund you're in, what it's basically doing is it's taking all of us out here as individual investors. Everybody has a different amount of money that they can invest. Somebody, some 50, some 100, maybe some 500, maybe 1,000, whatever it is. What it's doing is it's taking all those individuals, investors, it's pooling our money together. That big pool of money is being managed by a money manager. That professional money manager is taking in our dollars, going out into the economy and buying up different stocks of different companies across different sectors of the marketplace to make up that mutual fund. All right. What's important to understand is your average mutual fund is going to hold anywhere from typically 50, 75, maybe as this says, up to 150 different stocks that they're going to hold inside their mutual fund. All right. So what's the important takeaway from that? And if you go out there and you start reading, you start listening to different folks, one of the key things that they will always say is make sure you're diversified. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's different terminology. Even if you're in one mutual fund, you're diversified versus how's a bad way to invest. Now, I shouldn't use the word bad. How's a riskier way to invest? How is this different than saying going out and buying stock of a company? When you buy stock of a company, now all your eggs are in one basket because you're owning stock of just one company. You got a 50-50 chance of that going up or going down. All right. That would be a whole different discussion down the road. But when you come to mutual funds, you are diversified. In this example, in the big orange box or whatever color it looks like on your screen, is you can see the big bold. The bold are indicating sectors of the marketplace, and understand there's all different sectors. All right. Then within those sectors, you've got your companies. All right. So in this example, if you look at it, you look at all the names. Everyone on this probably you know all those names, and chances are you probably spend money with every single one of those. This would be an example of what I would call a moderate growth mutual fund. It's made up of very large, very well-known company names. They're not going anywhere. That would be this type of an example. All right. Now, another thing to understand, what are we buying then? We're not owning and buying those stocks that are inside that mutual fund. What we're doing is we're buying shares of the mutual fund. Once we've bought those shares are ours. We own those shares. Daily, the value of those shares are going to go up and down in value based on what the internal investments do. All right. Common question I get all the time: Jim, is there any way I can lose all of my money investing in a mutual fund? That answer is real simple. No. The only way that could happen is if on the same day, every single one of those 50, 75, 150 different company stocks that are held in that mutual fund, what would have to happen is all those companies would have to go out of business on the same day. Now, on this call, I think we could all agree when that day happens, and it will, we're not here no more. Okay, that's the scenario of what would have to happen. The world as we know it today would no longer exist. All right, and I would hope all of us on this call are celebrating in glory where when that day happens. But that is a simple answer. Now, will it go up and down in value? Absolutely. The only way that we can lose money investing in mutual funds is if we sell out at a lower price than what we bought in. Okay. But that leads into the next piece of where I want to educate families and individuals I work with. And same way here is to make sure that you understand why you would not want to do that. So not only losing if you sell out lower, but then when the market does go down, then how do we as an investor, how do we take advantage of that? All right. Well, we do that again through knowledge. That's the next slide that I want to share with you is a concept what's called dollar cost averaging. What it does, if you're systematically investing, which is what I encourage everybody to do, it's the most disciplined way to save and invest, is you set up an automatic um, program where on a set day or days, every month there's a set amount that's going into your investment program. All right. When you do that, you will automatically take advantage of this concept right here. All right. So what this shows us is it shows us two investors, investor A and investor B. Both investors are going to take $100 a month for a period of 6 months, and they're going to invest. Investor A is investing in what's called a rising market. Investor B, a fluctuating market. Now, if I was sitting down with you personally, I would say, and Brent's actually seen me do this, is I would ask the question then, which investor would you want to be? All right. Almost every single time, everybody picks investor A. The reason being is they're in their mind, they're seeing that rising market and they're like, I'm making money. Okay. So if we look at what's happening here, though, if we drop down below and we look, we're buying into the market. So when we're buying into a rising market, if you look at the example below, as the price is rising, our dollars in a rising market actually don't buy as much because the price per shares are higher. So we're actually buying less shares with the same amount of money versus the fluctuating market, which I'll give you a hint real quick. This is the world we live in. We live in a fluctuating market. But in that example, both started off at $10 a share. Okay. But investor B fluctuating fell as low as $2 a share back to the 10. So now I'll sit there with, say, a husband and wife and say, okay, now which one has the greater value after 6 months? Well, typically they're like, well, A, because it's higher. You take $20 a share, take 20 times 42 or 10 times 126. Math shows us the one that has the most amount of shares has the greater value. All right. I spend a lot of time with this with families to get them to understand because the media, coworkers, neighbors, family members, whatever that are also investing, they're going to use terminology that when the market drops, they're going to be like, oh my, I can't believe how much money I'm losing. Have you sold? If you have not sold, you haven't lost a dime. In return, what we should be doing is when we see the market go down, which we just saw 2 years ago happen, all right, what we should be doing at that point in time, we should be piling more money into our investments because now we're buying more. The market is on sell. So a year ago, it wasn't 2 years ago, a year ago, when we saw the market drop, I'm a very aggressive investor. And so my investments at one point in time, they were down 40, 45% in value. I was at a negative 45%. Well, a lot of people would have panicked at that point in time and said, get me out of here. And they would incur that loss. Instead, I was piling more money into my investments because now I was buying at a 45% discount. So this is a very important, just a very important thing to understand of how does this work? How can we take advantage? Because the market's constantly going to be going up and down. Now, I'll throw in something real quick, and we'll see where this is at, Brent, when you put this podcast out. But just yesterday, so today's the 14th of December. So just yesterday on the 13th of December, the Dow Jones closed at an all-time record high. Okay.
Yeah.
Today, the S&P is on track of setting a whole brand new record high. Now, we're living in a time right now, though, think about it. Everybody's like, how can that be? Because of where inflation is at, where our economy is at. The market is reacting in a whole different way. So all of a sudden, here we go. We're on this big, huge run. And if we haven't started investing yet, we just missed out on one of these runs. All right. But that goes back. Is there ever a bad time to invest? Never a bad time. Is there some times where it's better time than others? Absolutely. So when you see something like this happen where we see fluctuating, where we see it go down, hey, that ought to be a time that we say, okay, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, here's an opportunity. We need to be investing more dollars. Does that make sense there, Brent, on that?
Sure. Yeah. 100%.
Okay. So just like I said, that's a very important part to do that. There's another slide here, and Brent, I've just basically thrown this one in for more educational purposes. We find a lot, and something like this we find typically when we're working with probably not your 20 and 30-year-olds, but this is going to be more so when we're working with families, individuals that might be more in their 40s, 50s, that they knew it was important to save. They just didn't know where to go. This uses that same example. If somebody came in to say $10,000 and they just went down to the bank and put it in the bank. All right. Why is that? What's another reason why that's not good? Well, if we're getting, this one says and this would be at if you could get 4%. So this is showing if your annual interest was $400, you put in 10,000, okay? But on that, if you're in a 25% tax bracket, that's $100. So now your actual net earnings is only $300. So you put in 10,000 at the end of year number one, you've now got $10,300. All right. But, and right now is a great example of this. Inflation right now is much greater than 3%. But if we use it's just the average over many, many years, if inflation averages 3%, now you're back to your original $10,000. Your purchasing power has gone backwards. We're not increasing our purchasing power. So to understand the use of mutual funds and how to take advantage of the market, that's always going to be better on your side and putting that money to work for you versus sitting it in a bank or some sort of low interest bearing type vehicle. So I just kind of threw in that for a little bit more of a visual to where people could understand that, and this comes in where a lot of my clients will, but Jim, when I put it in the bank, I have a guarantee. And maybe they use CDs, for example. Well, I get this guaranteed of 5%. Yeah, but what's that really guaranteeing you? because what are you losing in purchasing power over that time frame? So again, just another piece for good education, to be able to utilize there. Okay. Something else that I have thrown in, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time with these. I know that Brent said that these will be out there for you all to be able to go out and look at. But what I've done is I've just provided a few different examples of some hypotheticals. And so understand this is no guarantee or anything of this nature. It's just I've put some hypotheticals in here, so people could kind of see some different examples. This first example I've just shown is if somebody puts in $2,000, they've got 40 years to invest. And in 40 years down the road, what would that look like? Well, if they got that into I'm just going to say a moderate growth mutual fund, nothing really fancy, just a moderate growth mutual fund, at 40 years down the road. So let's just say somebody today is age, 20, 25. Okay. So 20 years down the road, or I'm so 40 years down the road, you'd be 65. Right. So now at age 65, you never added to it, just a one time. You're going to be looking at 72, over $72,000 that $2,000 would have grown to. All right. The other example is I've used the same starting with, if you started with $2,000, but now what you're doing is you're going to then add and set up a systematic purchase plan of $100 a month. All right. So now what's happened is you've taken, and it's a huge difference. If you had this side by side, one-time investment of 2,000 is only 72,220. By just adding that $100 a month, $1,200 a year over that 40-year span of time, you've now have an ending balance of over almost $544,000. But if you look, your contributions total only equal $48,000. Okay. So huge impact by just that little bit, being able to put those in those scenarios. The next one is, okay, what if you had $5,000 sitting? Maybe you've gotten a gift. Maybe a grandparent or something has given a gift. Maybe they passed away and you got a $5,000 inheritance. Okay, I want to be responsible with this. I just don't want to go blow it. All right. Well, $5,000 one time, don't add anything to it. Same scenario, 40 years down the road. Now that's accumulated to over $180,000. But look at the last one that I thrown in. 5,000, and again, you just add $100 a month systematically. It's life-changing, because now at the end of that is over $652,000, but you've only invested, again, contributed a total of $48,000. So just huge impact that can have, just understanding some of these concepts, understanding the rules to how money works. That's that rule of 72, the compounding effect of the money, how to put mutual funds to work for you. Just great ways to make it simple. Again, we come back to the beginning, what Brent was saying, understanding, becoming knowledgeable, and then becoming disciplined to be able to do that. So,
Yeah.
Brent, I'm going to throw it back to you, and other questions that you might have
Sure.
that you feel might be good for them.
Yeah, so really, I mean, you've covered most of what I would want covered in this. We've talked about the importance of retirement. We looked into Roth IRAs. and the importance of, or just the wonder of a Roth IRA and what you can do with it. Not to mention all the information on mutual funds as well. And the thing is that's something that, I mean, I'm personally doing as a youth pastor. I know many other youth pastors that have started in retirement, focusing and preparation and stuff like that, that are doing the same thing as well. And so it is very, very important to get rolling on it. And like Jim said a little bit ago, $50 a month even is not that big of a deal. That's where we started. We started at 50, and we're going to grow it and grow it and grow it. And as we have more funds free up through paying off debt or just getting into different seasons of life or getting pay raises or anything like that, we're going to work on increasing that monthly investment to where hopefully it will do more for us in the future. And it's important. And so basically, Jim, my last two questions for you, sir, are, obviously we've talked about illiteracy being a big deal, and even some of the terminology that we've used today, maybe people are sitting here in this like, this is a foreign language to me, I don't understand anything that this guy is saying. Are there any resources that you'd recommend that would maybe do a better job explaining some of these terms or walking through on an easier basis to understand some of these methods, where they can kind of get that ground level understanding of what they're doing, so that can ultimately help them in this process?
There is, and thanks for asking that. So I give out to a lot of my clients. I get a great opportunity every once in a while. I get invited in to speak to maybe senior econ classes at the high school, and I provide them a book of what is titled "How Money Works." There is one out there that you can go out to if you go to www.howmoneyworks. And Brent, I think you even went out and researched this. He'll provide that resource there. But there's a digital copy of that, not only packed full of what I've just gone through, but it's what I'm going to refer to as basically your I don't let's see if that yeah, that might be that. I think is the one that we worked with there. Perfect there, Brent. That's the one. Um, I also have that in a paper form. Brent, I'll let you put my information out there. That if people want to
Yeah.
reach out, that'll be no problem. But that is a great resource to be able to go out to. Um, I will share with the group. Yes, I live in New Mexico, but I'm actually licensed in 10 different states, and so I know many of you on this call are spread out across the country. But it is not a challenge for me to get on the phone, visit with you, do a Zoom call, whatever it might be. And so my thing is very important to at least get you the information. Um, the company I'm with, we are spread out across the entire United States. We've got offices across the entire United States, Canada, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam. So if you're someone that you would actually like to sit down personally in person with someone, I can help with that also to hook you up if you don't already have somebody that you're working with. Brent, I'm going to come back to something a minute ago that you just said that I know the time of the year we're getting into, or that we're in right now, as youth pastors. Your churches right now are maybe are working on or have already finalized their next year's budgets. And many of you might be on here where maybe you're fortunate enough where you've been called in. They like you so much. Not only are they going to keep you for another year, but maybe they're going to give you a pay raise. All right. When you have those opportunities and you got a pay raise, you're sitting here thinking right now, man, Jim, I would love to get something started. When you get a pay raise, what a great opportunity. Most people, when they get that pay raise, before they ever see that first increase in their paycheck, they already have it spent. And And we need to not be doing that. When you know you're going to get a pay raise, those are great opportunities. One, to either start investing if you're not investing, because now you don't have to make a change. It's an easier adjustment, all right? Or number two, if you are saving, that is an even better opportunity to increase what you're already doing.
Yeah.
Increase that discipline. If you've already been doing 50 or 100 and now you saw your net take home go up by say $25, then raise your investment and savings by $25. You haven't been used to seeing those dollars. And so, Brent, you mentioned that, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, that's another great idea, especially if you're getting ready to start a year. New Year's resolutions, you name it,
Yeah.
that people do. Hey, this is the year I'm going to start. Well, what a great opportunity if you're seeing a pay raise. That also makes maybe a little bit easier to get something started like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right.
Okay.
Well, Jim, thank you for being on. And that is about it. The only thing that I ask all of our guests at the end is finally, if anybody wants to reach out to you and talk about this topic further, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you? How can they interact with you, whether it be email or phone or whatever you want to give? How can people reach out to you? And of course, for those listening, this is in the show notes, so you can go to our website and you can find all of the contact information available in the show notes for this episode.
Perfect. Thanks, Brent. Yeah. So, again, those of you, just reminder name if you didn't jot it down, Jim Johnson. And everybody is more than welcome to reach out to me. The best way is by either text or calling me directly on my cell number. My cell phone number is area code 575-430-7622. And so you're more than welcome to either call me on my cell, send me a text. If you send me a text, just make sure you know that, let me know who you are, how you came about, maybe refer back to the podcast, and the best contact number for you, and I'll be able to get back with you. But yeah, I appreciate that. And if you don't reach out to myself, my thing is this whole being the opportunity again to do this, Brent, and I appreciate it, is to get the information out. Whether you go through myself, more important thing is work with, find somebody you can work with,
Yeah.
and be able to get those things set up. Obviously, yes, I'm available, and be more than happy to provide any additional information, questions that people have.
Well, that's awesome. And Jim, thank you for your time on here, and the great information. And if you are listening to this and you are like, man, this was great, but I haven't started on anything, I need to get rolling. As Jim said, he's more than happy and more than willing to talk to any of you guys that are listening to this that might want to hit the ground running and start the new year off, 2024, with this being our first episode. Start off the new year right by starting on that retirement account for your future, for your family's future, and for every thing that you might have come up in your life. And I do want to bring up that the thing is like, this is not a paid episode. Like, Jim did not pay me to come on and like get more clients or anything like that. But the thing is like, when it comes to youth ministry, retirement is normally not something that's offered. And so this is a very, very important episode to talk about, because you need to prepare for your future, financially just as much as spiritually, because we do have, while our riches do not go with us to heaven, we do have to have some sense of wealth while we are here. And the more money we have, the more money we can give. And mutual funds and planning for retirement and all that is a great asset to get started on. So please reach out. But Jim, once again, it has been a great opportunity to have you on the show. Thankful that you helped me in my preparation for retirement. And for everybody listening, we hope that this episode was informative, and that you learned something new. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Brent.